Okay, a question that I get from a ton of you is, where do I start if I want to start a podcast? And I love when answers are simpler than we expect them to be. So I want to tell you about a resource that's changed the game for us with our podcast, and that is Spotify for podcasters. If you want to start your own podcast, Spotify has a platform that makes it so easy. You upload your episodes and then Spotify actually distributes it everywhere onto all platforms and even helps you earn money so that it can be profitable for you and a blessing for you, your family, your people. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit your podcast literally from your phone or your computer. So if you don't have a fancy setup, it's okay. You can immediately get started today. Then again, you distribute it to Spotify and everywhere else that podcasts are available. You can also do video podcasts, which sounds like a dream to me. And when you want to take conversations with your people to the next level, you can do Q&A and polls, all sorts of fun things. You can earn money with ads and podcast subscriptions, or you can just get started using what you've got for the good of others and the glory of God. Check out Spotify for Podcasters. I use it. I love it. I highly recommend it. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app. I have it on my phone, highly suggest, or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started today. Hi, I'm Jess Connolly, and you are listening to the Go and Tell Gals podcast. We exist to equip and encourage kingdom women who are using their God-given gifts for the good of others and the glory of God. If you are a mom, a student, an artist, a doctor, we are hoping that this episode will leave you encouraged and ready to run. We're so glad you're here. Let's go. Hey friends, Jess here. Listen, we have a very special Mother's Day episode for you today. We have my dear mother, Deb Hopper. And I want to tell you before we even get into the episode, if you are a mom in a traditional sense, if you are a foster mom, if you're an adoptive mom, if you are someone who mentors women, if you have a mom, this episode is for all of you. And we pray that you find encouragement and that it equips you and meets you right where you're at. I do want to tell you just a little insider info at the top of this episode. It was actually supposed to come out last Thursday, and it was posted on all of our podcast feeds. And early that morning, I happened to listen to the episode. I don't typically listen to it, but I listened to it first thing in the morning and just wanted to hear. And I realized that I had made a mistake in my language. And in the first part of this episode, you're going to hear Mom and I talk about spiritual motherhood and what that means and the implications of it, and maybe why we've gotten so comfortable with that phrase, but really what we're saying. And honestly, she has some really beautiful and insightful thoughts about it. But the first time we recorded this, I kept using the phrase biological when referencing the non-spiritual mothers, and that is not at all what I meant. What I meant is women who have children in their home that they're mothering, but we all know, and I know, that is not always biological. Oftentimes that means children you've adopted or children that you've inherited from other family members or children that you're fostering. And so we pulled the episode really quickly because I really wanted mothers of all kinds to feel included and honored and blessed and seen. But I wanted to just issue a quick apology in case you happened to listen to that episode and then saw it disappear. That's why. I kept using the word biological, and it's not what I meant to say. What I meant to say was relational or familial, meaning you have people in your home that you're parenting. We see all moms, we bless all moms, but we're going to talk a little bit about the distinction between spiritual mothering and familial or relational mothering. And I just wanted to have better language for it. So we re-recorded that portion. Also, if you hear any difference, part of it we recorded a week ago and part of it we are recording today. But you guys matter to us, and how you feel about your motherhood matters to us. So with all that said, let's hop in. We've got Deb Hopper on the podcast today. All right, Deb Hopper. It's Deb month in my life, and I love it. Now, I will say, I did ask you this question last week, but we're re-recording. And I'm at a disadvantage now because last week I asked you, what do you want for Mother's Day? And then I went and bought you some Mother's Day presents.
Oh.
But I mean, number one, I think I killed it. I think I did pretty good.
I'm sure
I'm pretty excited. But it is Deb month in my life because it's not only Mother's Day, and I love to honor this incredible mom of mine, but it's also your birthday.
Yes. I love May.
I love that you love birthdays, and I love birthdays because you love birthdays. So I do want to know, what do you want for Mother's Day?
Well, we talked about a night away or a day away, but I give you the same answer that I kind of give all three of you every year. I just want time with you.
Yeah.
I want some time to hang with you, some time to talk and catch up. And whether that's lunch, dinner, or time on the water, I'll take all three.
Well, listen, I'm really excited about your actual gifts, but I'm also excited that we have some time together planned.
Yes.
And my kids have been asking me, what do you want for Mother's Day? What do you want for Mother's Day? And I have so many answers because I am such a wanter, which is not something I love about myself. But I keep thinking like, ooh, I really like a new yoga mat. And also there was another workout-y thing that I really wanted. A yoga mat. I'd really like some new tennis shoes.
Yeah.
But what I landed on, what I really want from them is for them to clean out my car.
I love that.
Yeah. And so they keep asking, are you sure you don't want anything else? And I'm like, no, I just want you to deep clean my car. That's it. I just want you to like detail it. Yeah.
I think every woman would enjoy that.
Yeah.
No matter where you're at.
So I hand that to you, listener. If you are thinking of, you're like, what do I tell them I want for Mother's Day? Also, I don't know if somebody needs to hear this, but let's talk about this. What do you do if people in your life are not good at Mother's Day?
Well, I think you just take what they give you. Like, do you remember? I remember one of those years when I was a single mom with you and Kate, and you wanted to fix me dinner.
Yeah.
And so I pulled up, you were probably 7 and 10 at the time. And so I pulled up at the local Kroger and parked out front and let you go inside and pick out frozen meals.
This. Yeah.
I mean, probably today that wouldn't be a good thing. They wouldn't let children go into a store alone, but it was the 80s. And so we got away with it. But you picked out frozen meals and you came home and you microwaved them and it was the best gift ever. So whether it's, your 2-year-old picking you some flowers from the neighbor's garden that they shouldn't have picked, or your wish list on Amazon, or whether it's a random gift, because just enjoy the gift, joy and receive it.
Okay. I love that advice. I'm going to give a counter perspective in just a moment, but I think you should hear both. Okay. But I think you've also hit on something important, whether you're a mom in a traditional sense or not, and you're here for the spiritual motherhood conversation that you're going to love. I do want to say, check on your single mom friends and check in with their kids.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to do that this week. You lead an incredible single moms ministry. So I've been trying to check on all my single mom friends, their kids, and say like, do you have gifts? Do you need a little money? Can I Amazon a gift to your house for you?
That's right.
But don't forget to take care of the single moms in your life. Okay, here's just my counter perspective. I agree. I don't need to send out an Amazon wish list, but I think there's something to say for communicating hopes and maybe even like desires, especially if they're free, especially if even maybe the better way to say it is like communicate expectations for motherhood.
Yeah.
I think a few years ago, I had to start to say, I would actually really love to sleep in. And I want to explain to everyone here what that means.
That means 5:30.
Yeah. Well, specifically, I'm like with my kids, I would have to say like, that does actually mean you're going to have to be quiet. So I'm going to ask that you don't turn on the TV that lives on the other wall of my bedroom, at 7:30 in the morning. Can you read quietly for just this one morning? I think communicating expectations or even desires in a really, again, like hopeful and expectant way, not like, here's how I want everyone to pamper me on Mother's Day. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, don't let the day pass you by and then have that same regretful, like, then didn't get me a card. My friends who don't have kids didn't tell me Happy Mother's Day. If you're like me and a lot of your friends don't have kids or don't understand, like, number one, you can kind of try to let them off the hook, but you could also say like, send them a picture and say, I'm celebrating Mother's Day today. I love you. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't think we have to play that like, I'm so bummed out game if we have some like easy expectations or hopes to see fulfilled.
That's good.
You
I like
know?
that. And also, I just want to tag onto that. I mean, you're good at doing this as well, is remember, you can bless yourself.
Come on.
You know,
Say it.
I mean,
Tell somebody.
I mean, not just in buying the things that you need, but this week, I was making a list yesterday of what I wanted to do for birthday week and Mother's Day. And I thought, I want to see the water every day this week.
Yes.
So I put on my to-do list to either
So good.
an hour at the pool or the beach or just seeing the water every day this week. And I'm going to check it off when I get it done. And that's something I can take care of.
That's kind of exactly what I mean. Like, if there is something, if you're like, man, I would just really love to go on a walk by myself, make it happen and say, hey guys, I'm going to be going on a walk from 2 to 4. Good luck. Figure it out.
This blesses me.
Right. Or if you don't have support people, like trading time with another mom, like let's say your spouse isn't in the home or he works all weekend or something like that, like going to another mom and being like, listen, we need to take care of Mother's Day for each other. I'm going to take the kids half of the day on Saturday. You're going to take the other half. I think we can fight defeat even here a little bit. And of course it's a man-made holiday. And of course we get the joy of mothering. So all the things, but yeah, you can bless yourself.
Yes.
Amen. I love that. But I do also appreciate the also take what you get and be grateful. Because mothering is the gift. It really is. Right. It's the gift. So we win. Okay. We're going to dive right into this conversation. And here, I've already given a little disclaimer. We're re-recording this part of the episode. But I have told you now privately, I was so taken aback.
I think that's why you stumbled.
I asked you a question and assuming you would answer one way.
Right.
And your answer was so opposite that I then did not, I just was not using the correct language, which is why we're re-recording this. So I'm so excited to hear you talk about it again because I haven't stopped thinking about it. But here's what I asked you. I said, talk to me about spiritual motherhood. Do you love that title? Do you accept that title? Because I'm in this unique perspective of you're my mom, obviously,
right.
And I have 2 sisters and you're their mom. But I also go to church with you where you lead on staff and pastor and lead a lot of other women.
Right.
And I watch a lot of them look up to you as a spiritual mother. I made a joke about how I'm trying not to be so jealous about that anymore, but that's a true struggle for me. And so I said, what does spiritual motherhood look like to you? Talk to me about that. And then you came for it in the most beautiful way. I want to hear your thoughts again.
Okay. I feel the same way I did last week.
Thank God. Praise God.
Yes. I think we need to get rid of that term. I think we need to throw it out. And here's why. I've really prayed about it, thought about it, and it's not just a gut reaction. I feel like for 2 reasons. One, it doesn't honor or give credit to the women, the people that actually have done the work of birthing, raising, parenting, shepherding in whatever way.
Yes.
But they may not have done it in a spiritual way if we call other people spiritual moms. And I feel strongly about that because my own mother, and we've talked about Nana, your Nana, who has been in heaven 10 years now this year, but best mom ever in so many ways. She gave me my love for birthdays and celebrations and holidays. She showed me a lot of gifts of hospitality in the home. She was tender and she was strong in some really, hard seasons of her life.
Yeah.
But she never once that I can remember taught me about a scripture or a passage from the Bible. She never prayed with me.
Yeah.
I would not have called her, my spiritual guide.
Which is wild.
I know.
But I'm looking now back with eyes of reality, honestly, because our Nana, my Nana, your mom, is everybody's favorite person. I mean, my kids that barely knew her, she's still just hallowed.
An icon.
She's an icon. We love her. We don't have we don't have time together as a family where we don't tell a story about her, laugh. We all are trying to do our best Betty Powell impression. Right. We're all trying to be her. And yet, when you shared this the other day, I was like, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
She never prayed for us.
Yeah.
She never sent us a Bible verse. Now, I will say, when I look back, even with reality glasses, I'm like, that was some serious faith she still had like serious faith.
Oh, she loved God.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was just expressed in such a different way.
Right.
And so we didn't receive it in this mentoring. I mean, she never corrected me. She never, and I mean, she knew me through multiple pits. She never said like, now, Jessie, you got to figure this out. This is a mess. She never even so much as corrected me.
Right.
Or wrote a Bible verse in a card for me.
Right.
And when you said that the other day, I was like, whoa, you're right. But you have absolutely had women in your life who've done that from a spiritual perspective.
Yes.
And you have never discredited the honor and the value that your mom held. And so when we talk about this, there's so many little caveats to hold. So, I mean, the first major caveat is, I shared this with you, I think partly the reason we have seen a prevalence of this phrase, spiritual motherhood, arise is beautiful because we want to validate the maternal gifts of the kingdom that we see executed in the lives of women who may not be parenting in any sense. They don't have kids in their home. They don't have kids that they're parenting by any realm. And yet they still get to access this beautiful gift, the maternal side of the kingdom that is like, I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to shepherd. I'm going to teach. I'm going to guide. I'm going to lead. I'm going to care for. And so I like hold space for that to say like, what we're not saying is that if you do any of those things in a kingdom sense, that you don't get to access all the full maternal aspects and rights and responsibilities and gifts of the kingdom. It's just that phrase, I see what you're saying, has like become so, we have, I don't know, we've like worn it we put it on as like a new weird badge of honor. And I don't know that we know what we're doing from an honor sense to our mother. So then this is the next part I want to talk to you about. Then the other huge caveat is the women who would say like, okay, well, my mom or my grandmother was not Nana Banana. Like she was not Betty Powell.
Right.
She was not kind. She was not loving. It is very hard for me to honor her. And I want you to speak into that too.
Well, I think, I have the benefit of hindsight and a number of years thinking about this, processing pain of childhood. My mother was not a source of pain, but my father was. But I've found ways to still honor him and the things that he did bring into our life.
Yeah.
Without putting him on some kind of pedestal that he didn't deserve to be on.
Yeah.
He still provided for our family. He still served in a war. He was faithful and dependable in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of scars there too, and scars that we've had to work through as a family.
Yeah, I told you the other day, we've been doing this honor project with our kids. We've been trying to help them understand honor. And I know from like a church perspective, it gets like messy. Like some churches have like high honor culture, which we don't have here at Bright City. You and I are the only people who call Nick Pastor Nick.
It's kind of funny.
It is a little funny. And I guess sometimes. And, but that's not how our culture is. Like nobody gets his coffee for him. We don't have parking spots, We say honor flows the way of the cross, right? Yes. So honor flows the way of the cross. So it flows down, it flows up, and it flows to both sides. We honor everybody. That being said, we've been talking to our kids about honor because we see a real lack of honor in their life, specifically towards like some adults with authority or like positioning in their life, and us in particular, which we tell them. And we've been reminding them like, it's so crazy because this commandment, honor your mother and your father, it's the only commandment with a promise. Mm-hmm. Honor your mother and father so that it will go well for you.
Yeah.
And in thinking about this and thinking about like, okay, even my friends, which, this is not a far off story from us without getting really, really vulnerable and transparent. This isn't a far off story for either of us. Like we don't have to imagine like what it would be like to have hard relationships somewhere in the family. But for my friends who if I were counseling them one-on-one and they had very hard relationships with their mother or their father, I do want to say that I would still encourage them to honor. But knowing what honor means is pivotal here. And honoring doesn't mean like allowing them to sin all over you. Right. Honoring them doesn't mean you don't set boundaries with them.
100%.
I would say for me, it has a lot to do with how you talk about them.
Yes.
And how you speak to them. And sometimes the best way to speak kindly to them and about them is by setting boundaries.
Right.
you know,
know yourself.
Yeah. Is by saying like, actually, I am not going to pick up the phone every time you call. So all that being said, like, I still think there's this call to honor, even when people are really broken and sinful. And I want you to talk a little bit about honor. And then I want us to go vulnerably again to talk about the season where we had I feel like I had a really hard time honoring you. I hope it is a blessing to other moms.
Okay. Yeah, I actually dug into the verses about honor in Ephesians and in Deuteronomy. In Ephesians, the Greek for honor is tima, which means to value, to fix the value on something, or to prize something. And so it's not a fake prize, it's fix the value on it. And so in thinking about my mother and my father and how I can honor their lives and what they did and what they gave to me and to our family, that's what I've tried to do. Fix the value on it. There's a value in everything. There's a value in people's lives. And if you just look, once you're distanced, it's easier too. If you're in the middle of a painful situation, it's hard.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about the distance too in a second. But you know what we didn't get to say in the first episode that I know you will agree is that if you want a longer form example of this, if you want to see what this could actually look like in a very extreme example, you have to read Beth Moore's memoir.
100%. Yes.
100%. After we got done recording last week, I was like, why do we not bring up Beth Moore's memoir?
No, I thought about the same thing. After I listened to the Audible and hearing her voice and the way she tenderly and carefully described her childhood.
Yes.
Without
tenderly. Ooh, I could cry talking about it.
And gave honor to the places and the things and the prizes that her parents gave to her.
Yeah.
It did prompt me to then write that newsletter about my mother.
Yeah. So you're going to talk a little bit about this in your newsletter this week that comes out this Thursday. Yeah. Yes. The day this episode is going to re-air. If you guys don't follow Mom on Instagram, Deb Hopper, it's just Deb Hopper on Instagram, correct? And you can find all the information, but we're also going to put it in the show notes to sign up to get her newsletter because you're going to share a lot of thoughts about this. But yeah, we're saying like such short snippets about it, but after hearing you talk about this and listening to Beth Moore's podcast, I was like, oh, there's something for our generation here. There's something for us here because TikTok culture and like all the beauty of modern psychology, which I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of therapy, et cetera, all those things. But when we digest, it's like how people go to therapy on Instagram. Like when you just, when you're reading graphics and you're not doing like actual real work, and you're like, now I'm rambling, but it's a little bit similar to how we call everybody a narcissist now. And it's like, whoa, that's a big word. That's a big word. Like somebody having a bad day doesn't make them a narcissist. There are real narcissists. Let's don't negate that by calling everybody a narcissist. But I think that there's something here for our generation about being able to do both. Like, let's grow and evolve. Let's say this was bad. This was harmful. I do not want to repeat this pattern. This person hurt me. I can take the space to grieve that, to learn from it, to set boundaries, and yet I'm going to honor them.
Yes.
Let's don't throw out the honor. So I think that was really interesting. And of course, all that being said, we also believe in the name of Jesus that if you are a woman, there is no part of kingdom motherhood, for lack of a better word, that is off limits to you. There's no part.
Right.
Having a child in your home, birthing a child, adopting a child, going through the fostering process, inheriting a child from another family member, whatever that looks like, that is not the moment that makes you able to use these God-given gifts. So whether you have a child in your home or not, whether you never plan to, you get to access all of the beautiful and incredible maternal parts of the kingdom.
Yes.
You get to lead. You get to care. You get to shepherd.
And we're there for it.
Bring it.
I love when younger women give me a word or speak prophetically to me or pray for me in a personal way. Yeah. I mean, I could not go through my days without it being a both and.
Yeah. So
we need all the generations pressing in for more of God.
Yeah. Okay. In a minute, we're going to talk about adult motherhood, and you have a word for some moms of adults, and I hope we'll encourage some of the adult children as well. But I did want to share this in light of the honor conversation and the mother and the value, is that I wanted to say, before we recorded this last week, you and I had never talked about this publicly. I don't even know that we've all that much talked about it privately.
No.
And we had different takes on this season. But I told you, like, I still feel like I have to massively repent for the way I didn't honor you in my late 20s.
Mm.
And I had never yelled at you in my life, never talked back to you growing up. I was not obedient.
Right.
But I wasn't a yeller. I wasn't a fighter.
You were silent.
I was a silent sneaker. But something happened in my 20s that I now see a lot of my friends walking through, where I was convinced like you didn't understand me. I was convinced that I just wanted to do everything differently. I was convinced that I had to like make my own way. And I went through a season of really struggling with honor. In fact, I told some friends about this episode and I was telling them that, and they were like, we literally cannot imagine. And I said, I'm telling you, you can't. You cannot imagine. Like, the way I treated you was so unkind. But you and I talked a lot about how some of that is a very normal, norming, storming, forming. Like,
it's all a part of the 20s.
Some of it is really normal. And I watch a lot of people in my life going through it. And so my encouragement is, number one, I'll actually say this, like, watch who is speaking into the way you treat your mother and your father. And in my life, and I shared this the other day, I was in a really toxic church community that was really incredibly toxic, not cute TikTok calling things toxic. It was incredibly toxic and harmful. And they encouraged us to do conflict and confrontation and accountability in an incredibly unhealthy way. And I was trying to bring that to my family, which I had no business to do. God had not asked me to be your accountability or to correct you. And so a lot of that conflict was because I was trying to lord something over you, or it wasn't just you, it was everybody in my life. You know, I had conflict with everybody in this season. So I want to say, like, if you're continually surrounding yourselves with people who like let you kind of just talk awfully about anybody, not just your parents.
Yes.
But if they're letting you talk about your friend or even your kids or your husband or your spouse, and they're like, oh yeah, you're right, they're the worst. Maybe let's find new people to talk to about conflict, because nobody's the worst. Like, the worst of the worst people have value in them and need to be spoken about in that way. And absolutely, we set boundaries with harmful people, et cetera, all of those things, of course. And also, we need to talk about people with respect and value and honor, because they're image bearers of God. And we don't lose anything from that. And so my one thing is, like, I would encourage women, if you're struggling with any kind of relationship, but specifically with, if you're an adult struggling with your parents, like, make sure you're talking to honoring people about it. And then my second is, like, do take a deep breath, because hindsight is 2020. Mm-hmm. And what I told you is, when things really started to shift for me is when I realized I am making the mistakes right now with my kids that they're going to be talking about in therapy in their 20s and 30s.
Yes.
And how do I want them to look at me? I really want them to look at me and say, like, she was doing absolute best she could. I mean, I want them to be like, I don't want to repeat these things my mom did. I want to learn from them. I don't want them to be like me. I want them to do better than me in so many things. But I would be so devastated if they were like, oh, she was the worst.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying and I love them and I'm bleeding out for them. And I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, you were bleeding out for us. Like, and you still were in my 20s and you still are now. And so that hindsight of, like, just really starting to, like, see the beauty in everybody doing so much with, like, what they've been given. You are a single mom, like, raising two hellacious teenage girls. I've got some that, like, don't even come close to what you were dealing with. And you were, like, praying for us and pounding the pavement, asking God for things for us, and patiently seeing more in us and calling us up to more. And so that moment does come where all of a sudden you're like, oh, I am making my own very big mistakes right now.
Right.
And I'm still trying as hard as I can, which is wild.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think you get a lot of grace for other people after you're in those spots yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has to be just a decade of 20s. You know, there's some maturity. It can be different seasons, but it does come, you are able to extend more grace. And, I remember we even wrestled with that phrase when I said it one time, well, they're doing the best with what they've been given. And you took me down about that.
I didn't know that about you, but Katie and I, that's our story. We had a knockdown, drag out fight over that phrase.
No, I remember having
I hated
healthy discussion with you about it. You hated that phrase. But I think for me, watching generations before me that came up in very different circumstances, very different privileges and lack of, and just a lack in their lives, gave me a lot of grace for them to say, they never had parenting classes. They never had biblical training on parenting. And they didn't have anybody really speaking into their lives to show them how to do it. So it just gives you a little bit more grace when you look at somebody's background.
Yeah.
And you look at their scars and their wounds.
Yeah.
And you're able to just excuse a lot more.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say a few more things about it. Yeah, number one, they're doing the best they can with what they have. That phrase was very triggering for me, and also very, very indicative of where I was, because I was in a church culture that said no one is doing the best they can with what they have. We are all sinners. We are all worms. We are all the worst. And it just wasn't a complete picture of the gospel. And so I couldn't live into that for myself. And ultimately for me, that's what led to like deep, deep depression, because I was like, I'm the worst. I'm the worst there is. And it just wasn't the whole gospel.
Right.
It wasn't the complete gospel. So some of it is the gospel. But the other thing I want to say is, we talk about this a lot on the podcast. We talk about balance and how do we balance work and rest? How do we balance grace and truth? And our often answer at Go and Tell Gals is, does it need to be balanced? And I would say the same is true for this. Like, balancing honor and boundaries are not things that need to be balanced. Balancing respect and also like wanting to do a new thing in your life and like grow, those are not to be balanced.
Right.
Honoring and respecting our parents does not mean that we say like everything they did was perfect and I would do it all the exact same. We don't balance these things. No. We can do both, but one informs the other.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that too. And this is a last word on spiritual motherhood too. I think like, obviously this is not the definitive answer. This is like, you're giving such a beautiful perspective. I think it's less about saying like, do you feel like a spiritual mother or not? And more of like a check about maybe putting that label on other people in our lives. Yeah. And I do want you to speak a tiny bit to the pressure of, if you will, of like feeling that label and what that means.
Well, I think another reason we've accepted it so readily is it is used a couple of times in the Bible. Deborah was called the mother of the nation.
Yeah.
And because she was a mother and then she was a leader, but she was a powerful, she was a judge, but she was also a warrior leader in battle. And the term mother of the nation, sometimes that gets used, about me from other people. She's the mother of our church. Yeah. She's the mother of this room.
Yeah.
And I just think it makes it too messy, and it is a little bit of a weight on me because I have 3 that I'm mothering and 11 that I'm grandmothering.
Yeah.
And it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
And when I divert those nurturing, I can still nurture people without mothering them.
Yep.
So when I feel the weight of mothering someone who may not feel like they have that in their life, it's added pressure.
Yeah. So good. And I believe it may be just another straw on the camel's back of the way that we're setting leaders up for failure right now. And the way we're finding ourselves disappointed in people like, she was my spiritual mother and then she sinned, rather than being like, well, I was really learning from this person and she needed God. And she had a moment where she didn't trust God for a minute and we both needed the gospel. You know what I'm saying? It's like just another straw on that camel's back of like, this is too much for one person to hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And truth be told, if people knew like my innate mothering skills, I don't think they'd really want me to be their mother.
Disagree.
No, because think about the tough love and the way that I didn't always nurture, but I was because I had to be. I was in a season of doing it alone for a while. But, our joke is if you were sick, I said, take a shower, take a nap, unless you're bleeding, you go to school.
Maybe who I am.
Right.
And I think, I think what the truth to it is, like, you're so uniquely qualified to mother the people God's given you to mother.
Exactly.
Whether they're biological, whether they're adopted, whether they're foster kids for a season, like whether God brings them to you for you're so uniquely qualified to mother them, and we can trust his insight about placing us in front of them. Because like, it's like when I tell our friends that you and I talk openly about sex, and they're like, I could never. And I'm like, right, that's great. Or the way we coach each other, you know, or how even encouraging we are. I think even the amount of life that we speak in our family, I think would be too much for people, you know?
Or how you three girls already like teach and lead me in certain areas. So,
well,
I sat under your teaching 3 times last weekend.
That's true.
I get words from Katie regularly. I get encouragement from Caroline.
Yeah.
But I think about Mary and Jesus, you know, and that scene where, you know, in the Bible where she prompts him to do his first miracle, changing the water into wine.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not my time yet. How did Mary feel? I feel that way sometimes. You know, there's a lot to parenting that isn't mothering.
I also have the benefit of getting your encouragement in my motherhood. And I want to say right now, you are such a gentle advice giver. You're so good at giving it really gently. Sometimes I won't even know until after it's over that I'm like, oh, she just very gently corrected me about my motherhood. You do that on purpose, right?
No.
You don't?
No. I really try not to give any advice. That was kind of what I was going to say about adult children.
Yeah, which we're going to get to.
Yeah. But I would say your best things should be, you know, caught, not taught.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what it looks like. So I want to talk a little bit about encouragement that you would give to current mothers who are in the thick of it, which, raising my hand, I'm in the thick of it. So I will say, I feel like 80% of our interactions about my motherhood is just straight encouragement. You just constantly tell me you're doing everything right, which I'm not, but I know that you're saying that because, you know, I feel a lot of shame and fear. And so you're saying, like, you're doing great, keep going. One thing that really means a lot to me, if there are any mothers of adult children listening, is that you kind of mourn with me when it's hard, and you'll say, that is hard.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
That is hard. But here's what I mean. Sometimes, maybe it's just because I know you so well. Sometimes when you don't say anything, I know you're thinking, what could she be doing here? And then often you will present even like a prayer or a verse or an idea that you want to help me with.
Yeah.
And I can tell, like, she's noticed, like, here's a gap, or here's a left turn I could take, or here's a shift I could make. But you don't say, Jess, you should try this instead. Instead, you'll, like, again, I feel like you'll give me a verse, or you'll give me a prayer, or you'll say, like, hey, I was thinking, why don't I come over and we'll try this? Right. You know? I don't know. Like, I feel so like, okay, gently corrected. Or sometimes, like, just if you're quiet and not in a withdrawn or hurtful way, but if you're a little quieter, I can tell, like, okay, I might be the crazy one right now, not my kids.
Yeah. It's the hardest thing because, especially for me, as you know, as a doer, an achiever, and a strategist, like I want to make a plan to make whatever it is better.
Yeah.
And yet you're also equipped to do that, and they're your children.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess that's my biggest piece of advice to moms in the thick of it is just live your best life and your truest life for who you are.
Yeah.
While you're in the thick of it, because later you're going to want to keep living that life.
That's good.
You know?
That's good.
So, well, for me, that was always heavy on the career side because I didn't have a lot of options. I didn't have the choice or the chance to be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
And I had relationships all day long. So I really had to fight to decide what did I really need in the margins of night and weekends to still be fully alive and still parent and mother. So it's different for every single person, you know, without comparing yourself to the next person. But I did always try to stay fully alive, to try to stay fully engaged in life, because if you don't, then what you end up doing is living through your children.
Yeah.
And then you do that your entire life.
Yeah. Okay. So let me mirror back what I'm hearing you say, and you tell me if I'm saying it right. So, I was in like a really hard motherhood season the last few months. Something that I tried to do, because I do feel like you very much modeled this for me, is I kept exercising. I kept having girls' nights. Right. I kept kissing my husband.
Right.
I kept trying to laugh. Yeah. I didn't pull back on any of those things. I kept showing up at work. In fact, one night you had to like coach me as I drove to a speaking engagement after a horrible day of motherhood.
Yeah.
Everything in me, like I wanted to not go. I knew I had the freedom to call them and say like, this is just not going to happen.
Right.
But is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good word. And I want to say none of that felt life-giving at first. Like some of it was really hard.
It is
to show up to the things that made me feel alive.
It'd be easier to pull the covers over, you know, or just find a way to hide.
To act defeated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you keep showing up,
wow,
keep doing 100% of what you know that you're supposed to do.
Yes.
Not what the next person's doing and not what another mother might do, but what is your what is your fullest life?
Yeah. That's a good word. Whew, that is a word. Okay. You and I have never talked on the podcast about this. This is completely fresh. I don't know. Have you even talked about this anywhere publicly? I want to talk about adult parenting adult children. And I know a lot of friends who are in the thick of it right now. And in this transition from like, my mom was my mom, maybe insert like a gentle eye roll. Now I'm figuring out my own motherhood. I'm figuring out my own adult life. I don't know her place. I feel like I hear, and I know you hear from those mothers of adult children, this is really hard. So first of all, we had a transition for sure.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I'm just being really vulnerable right here because this is about me and my sin. People always ask me, my daughter Glory is 15 and she's fiery. She's a firecracker. And they always say, is Glory just like you when you were a kid? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I would have never crossed my mom.
Right.
Confirm. Probably never yelled at you. I did that one time about that magazine, the Time magazine that was in our bathroom. Do you remember? This is the only time in my entire childhood I remember yelling at you.
You're my memory. So
yeah, there was a Time magazine that had a cover of like the Oklahoma bombing. And I lost it one night and was like, and can we get this Time magazine out of the bathroom? It's triggering. But I didn't say that. But I was like, that is the only time I remember yelling at you ever.
So funny.
I think everybody in the family was having an argument and I was like sitting quietly in the corner and I was like, well, I want to say something about the Time magazine. I was a very sensitive kid.
Yes.
I did not yell at you. I did not cross you until I turned like 25.
Yeah.
And then I was really disrespectful for like 5 solid years.
I don't think you were disrespectful.
I do. And I repent.
You were just forming and figuring out who you were.
I was a hot mess. I was not honoring you well. I really wasn't. Wow. And I have compassion for myself. And then I was like, I was finding my voice. I was also in a very toxic church community that was teaching me like, this is how you talk to people. And also, it was just really unhealthy. And so I was trying to figure out, I think I was also figuring out my Enneagram 8-ness, which had been deeply buried. I didn't know how to do conflict well. What I know now is that I'm really good at healthy conflict. And then I just wanted to do conflict. Like I didn't want to do it healthy. I just wanted to like get all this tension out on the table and wrestle it out. And now I really want to get tension out, but I want to do it in a way that doesn't hurt people, obviously. Anyways, it was hard. 25 to 30 was hard. And I know it was hard, not just with me.
Yeah.
So
it's a tough
talk
decade.
about the whole thing.
I really only have one piece of advice for parenting adult children because I learned this the hard way and still don't do it correctly all the time. But that's do not give advice until you're asked.
Yeah.
Do not give advice.
Yeah.
Insight, your ideas, your thoughts on anything, whether it's home decor or parenting.
Yeah.
Or fashion, or careers, or places to live.
Yeah.
Don't give advice unless your adult child comes to you and says, what do you think about this?
Right.
And then game on.
Yeah.
You can say what you think and feel led to talk about. But
when does that cut off? When do you do it at 18, when they graduate college, when they get married? Because I think there's a lot of people like, right, the boundary lines are blurry.
Yeah.
When does because you have to give your child advice, whether they want it or not.
Right.
So when does it cut off?
Well, I would say as long as you're providing for them in any sense.
Oh, well, I like that.
You're paying for them. You're paying for their lifestyle. You're paying for college or an apartment or any of that.
What if they're just on your insurance? I'm just trying to get into the nitty gritty.
If you want black and white,
yeah,
then they need to get off your insurance.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
As soon as they
want it to be clear.
As soon as they have a job and are starting to, that was our biggest deal. Get you out of the house and on your own.
Life. Yeah. I'll never forget. So, I mean, both my older sister and I got married really young, and you guys were really clear. Like, you get married whenever you want. We love these spouses, but you are on your own from day one, which was really helpful for us. And I'll never forget, I got pregnant 8 months into being married, and I wanted to switch doctors. I think I've told this story before, and you've said you don't remember it, but I wanted to switch doctors. I wanted to switch actually from an OBGYN to a midwife for my first pregnancy. And I called you and basically said, like, is this okay with you? And you were like, not my body, not my baby. You don't ask me anymore. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. Right. And you were like, sounds good, but like, this isn't my decision anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, got it.
Yeah. So that kind of guides the advice, of when you give advice and when you don't.
Yeah.
But it's tricky. I'm telling you, it's tricky because sometimes you'll be in conversation or in relationship with your adult child and you think they're asking, but they're not really. They're wanting affirmation or approval. Like that time. You had already researched it and decided kind of where you wanted to go.
Right.
So you weren't really asking me what I thought about midwives.
I wasn't asking for wisdom. I was asking for permission. Which is different.
Right. It's very different.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I still struggle with it. It's not easy.
And you do a great job.
No,
you really do.
Well, and that's my only advice to the flip side, to you, the adult girls, is give some grace when they get it wrong.
100%.
Because it's the hardest thing to have been down a path and already seen defeat and or victory, and then not be able to speak to it and not be able to advise or give your opinion about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I messed up as recently as last week. And once I messed up, I knew the only thing I could say was, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then just let it sit.
Yeah.
And then it came back around,
Yeah.
So I don't get it right still.
Don't you think this is I think this is a rule for adult mothers and adult daughters, but don't you think this is probably a general rule for all relationships that for there to be abundance, there needs to be a lot of grace.
Yeah.
There just needs to be a lot of space. And honestly, if I'm honest, probably partially what, for me, helped us make the switch from tension in my late 20s to literally I would crawl into your skin and live there for the rest of my life. And I tell you constantly, privately and publicly, I'm really just trying to be like you. I want to do everything you do, Something changed into I'm not driven by a desire to make you proud. I feel like there's not a wound there where I'm like, I need you to tell me good job because you're so affirming, but I just want to do what you do. Just want to do how you're doing it. But I do think probably part of that transition was me seeing the future weight of my kids and my relationship with them and knowing there is no way I'm getting out of this thing doing it right.
No.
There's no way I'm getting to their adulthood with them looking back and saying, man, my mom was perfect.
Right. Oh.
So if I don't give you a ton of grace and space, how in the world am I going to ask for them to have an abundant relationship with me?
Exactly.
If I think I have to be perfect for them,
You're going to have so many messy moments and so many times that you regret if you want to live in that regret.
Yeah.
I mean, I could live in 1,000 regrets.
Right.
But I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. And thank goodness I
Thank
don't have the
goodness.
memory for it. And
Same. Well, I
the
have a
worst
good
that you
memory,
remember
but
is the Time magazine. So,
I really do. I think like this is my word to adult daughters who are really wanting to see some healing or some abundance or a new season with their moms. I would say like, even if you have a great memory, I have an incredible memory, like put some things to bed,
yeah.
you know, and the best you can. God did change my mind about this, but I think some of it was like a decision to let my mind be changed. But when I look back on anything, because again, I have a phenomenal memory. So I can remember like so much about childhood, but I see all of it now in this light of like, she was a courageous single mom showing up without many of the tools that we have access to. You didn't have the Enneagram.
Right.
You didn't have people looking out for single moms the way they are starting to now.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have phones to check in with us. I always tell you the piece I cannot get over when I think about our childhood is I'm like, you had to do laundry without Netflix on your phone. The only way I do laundry is putting in my AirPods and watching Netflix. It's the only way my kids have clean clothes. And you were just out there doing laundry, just doing the laundry. Listen to what, the radio? We didn't even
had television.
I'm just saying.
Not that ancient.
It was in one room and you had to move all the laundry there. I'm just saying. You didn't have a podcast.
Yes.
I can remember hard things. I just see them all basked in this light of grace and just awe of you. So in the name of Jesus, like you are going to have to let your mom off the hook. And you are going to have to say, I want to see this from her perspective. So much of your 20s is about seeing your childhood from your perspective. But when you want to see the light, start seeing it from everybody's perspective.
Yes.
How was 100%. That for her? How was that for them? How was I for them?
Right.
Gosh almighty, you know, like I was a really, really, really difficult kid in different ways than my older sister was difficult, you know?
Yeah.
I was secretive and snotty and like, all the things. Anyways, I want to see more adult women walk in as much healing as possible. It's not going to be possible for everybody, but as much healing and abundance as possible with their moms in their adult lives.
Yeah. Looking ahead instead of looking back.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of that, I want to ask you this. I do feel like we have so many tools as current day present mothers that you didn't have access to. I really just want to know, which ones are we not taking advantage of? Which ones are you like, ladies, this is going to help your motherhood. Step into it. Use it right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always enjoyed technology since we had email and the internet in the 80s. But I feel like I'm still behind the curve on a lot of things that I'm learning from you girls. And I would just say, learn and grow as much as you can and take it all on, but then throw off what's not comfortable for you. Because for me, here's an example, a really silly example. Instacart was not something I wanted to embrace initially. I thought it was wasteful and unnecessary, and I'm very frugal when it comes to like daily living. I'm extravagant when it comes to experiences.
I would even still say you're extravagant, but
no, I feel like I'm pretty frugal, and like I still get the senior discount. And go to the store on the days that I can. But then the pandemic hit, and I was like, oh, Instacart really might save my life.
Right. Literally. Yeah.
So,
and I threatened to come tackle you if you went to the grocery store.
Right.
There was also
that. I was going to the store when seniors could go at 6 a.m.
Right.
And then I decided that's not helping anybody, because I'm not a 6 a.m. gal. So then I embraced it, but now I've thrown it off except when I really need it. I still really enjoy grocery shopping because I feel like I can work that budget muscle better in the store than I can online. But I use it for emergencies, when we're traveling and I come back home and need Sunday dinner or for whatever reason. So that's one example. Podcasts, my goodness, take advantage of everything that's available in learning.
That's good.
We didn't have podcasts, audibles, ebooks. And so I like embrace all of those. And then I settle into what's good for me, in terms of I like Kindles, so I like ebooks, or I'll listen to an Audible. But then occasionally I'll pull out a hard copy book. But to not try any of those things, like you said, Netflix while you're doing laundry, it just helps. Find what is, I like to listen to fun things when I'm doing hard things.
Come on.
So
pleasure stacking.
Yes.
Love it. Love. Okay. I just want to take a minute. Will you just give like a final word to anybody who's listening? Anything you want to tell them about motherhood? I'm not going to say spiritual motherhood, but motherhood, any way you want to encourage them or bless them or send them in this season.
Just that if you're in like the thick of it, you're in a hard season. And, it sounds so silly to say this too will pass, but it really is going to pass.
Thank you, God.
And it really is going to, if you continually like release your children to God and take your hands off of them so tightly, they're going to end up as beautiful humans that you're going to love being with and love growing with.
Thank you, God.
It's just, there are some seasons that are hard and you're going to have to just walk through the hard and try to repent often when you screw up.
Yeah.
And then keep your head above water and keep your head down in your devotion time and your time with God.
So good.
To get wisdom from him. But it's going to pass.
Yeah.
I think that's the long distance view.
Yeah.
That I enjoy so much right now is knowing how God brought you and Katie and Caroline out of some dark seasons into beautiful life.
Yeah.
And so if you're in that season of diaper changing or a terrible two, or a teenager who's really testing you every day, just know that it's a season.
Yeah.
Seasons have a beginning and an end.
Praise God. That's such a good word. Hey, we love you. Thank you for everything.
Thanks.
Oh, you're a blessing. I love you so much. Go send this to a friend and ask what she wants for Mother's Day. You might not get it, but it'll be a good question, okay? We love you. God's mighty in you. Let's go. Thanks for joining us for today's podcast episode. If you have a minute, we would be so blessed if you would take a minute to leave a review wherever you've listened to this podcast. You're also welcome and encouraged to share this on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you use social media. We'd also love to hear from you. DM us on Instagram or send us a message on Facebook, shoot us an email. We love to connect with you to hear how we can encourage you and further equip you. God is mighty in you. Let's keep going.